Now that patch 11.27 has had some time to breathe, I can say something refreshing that I've not been able to say many times during the war within. It's better than anyone could have expected. Except for a few ways it's secretly a little bit worse. If you're busy with housing, it may feel like literally the smoothest patch launch we've seen this expansion. But if you're looking at anything else, it's a little bit of a different story. There is a lot to go through in today's news, so I'll start with the freshest first, and that is the mysterious Legion Remix finale. Now, speaking pro gamer to pro gamer, do you know what tells me? Dying behind cover, missing an interrupt, things like that where your client shows that you're safe, but clearly the server disagrees, perhaps because your packets took the scenic route. And if routing is the problem, today's sponsor Exit Lag can help you out. You see, ISPs choose internet paths based on policy and cost, not on gaming latency, so you don't always get the fastest route. What Exit Lag does is it actively maps multiple paths to game servers, and it routes your traffic over the best ones in real time. Now obviously it's not magic, it won't fix bad Wi-Fi, overloaded servers, or massive amounts of distance, but where routing is the bottleneck, the difference is real. And this can benefit you most if these situations sound familiar. Your ping is fine during off-peak times, but spikes at peak times, or you're far away from your server region, or you've got weak ISP peering. Perhaps you see jitter and desync that ruins things like, say, time critical PvP. They support over 3,000 games and apps, and the setup is really simple. You pick your game, choose a route, then you test. There's a 3-day free trial on desktop with no card, so it's genuinely no risk. So you can try it during your peak hours and then keep it if you see a measurable improvement. And here's the best bit. My offer is 50% off an annual plan, so that's 12 months for the price of 6. Just scan the code or use my link, which is down in the description. So then, the secret of a mysterious Infinite Echoes. Until it launched this week, we had no idea what it was going to be. We knew there'd be catch-up, but that was about it. Data mining did find a single achievement, Cloudy with a Chance of Infernals. That sounds like demons raining from the sky. And back in the WoWcast and Remix, Blizzard compared it to how the final days of a beta used to go. Pure chaos just for its own sake. And within Remix, the NPCs themselves spent the whole event backing that up. All the Infinite Dragons were speaking of how the timeline was unraveling and becoming unpredictable. That all seems like a perfect excuse for chaos. So with that, and a lot of data mined appearances still being missing, we all started to build the one thing Blizzard should be afraid of: expectations. In the absence of info, we started to have ideas about what Infinite Echoes could be. Maybe we'd get massive invasions all across the Isles, you know, Infernals, meatballs. Maybe it would be a huge bronze windfall so that latecomers could catch up over the holidays. Hell, maybe other timelines could bleed across. I mean, it's a silly playground mode with infinite possibilities. Well, the phase is out now, and we finally know what Blizzard have been cooking. The Infernals did actually show up. Lost Legion Infernals are rapidly respawning repeatable world bosses scattered across the Isles, accompanied by far too many demons. Knocking them over awards a decent chunk of basically everything you could want. On the story side, short new quests exist to say goodbye to all of our Infinite Dragon friends, and on the gear front, well, getting strong is getting a whole lot faster with flawless threads of time. Instead of the moats that nudged you up 3 eye levels at a time, these threads give you far larger eye level jumps, and they come from scrapping gear, which basically just speeds things up immensely. Infinite power gains have also been substantially buffed, and together these make getting ready to blitz Mythic and Taurus a hell of a lot faster. And on top of it all, XP gains have been buffed significantly. By finishing Infinite Research, you stack 3% extra XP per quest up to 30%. So you get faster power and you get faster leveling, which does feel like the last day of school, like Remix is supposed to. There's just one little problem. It seems that's not what a lot of people have wanted. Basically, here's the deal. To a lot of people, Legion Remix is a collectathon. And to actually collect everything from this event, you would need to farm 6.5 million bronze. That's a lot of bronze. And if you've been playing regularly this whole time, you're probably well in your way. If not, it probably feels hopeless. Not unless you want to run every raid every day. I mean, literally, you're probably out of luck if you're not able to just go complete no life into this, because there's, well, 40 or fewer days left. And this is all in a mode where we are basically one-shotting everything effortlessly, which does kind of mean that more power doesn't change many people's reality. Just the raw playtime of farming bronze is kind of the killer here. And now that people are making that very well known across the internet, hopefully Blizzard can throw in a little hotfix to keep everyone basically happy. And there is an easy answer to this problem. Stick a 5 or 10 times multiplier on bronze, and people will just remember Legion Remix rather fondly. Now, you could argue that in doing that, they would devalue everyone's playtime so far. But here's the thing, perhaps. Blizzard are happy to do that with gear and infinite power. They're happy to do that with seasonal resets every patch, even with Turbo Boost. As far as I can tell, there's no reason not to stick a 0 in the end of bronze. Hell, they could even use this to create a little miniature hype cycle, even if a few people would ultimately be a little bit disappointed by the lack of chaos. Well, so far anyway, because that chaos could be coming. Maybe they still have plans. All we know is the achievement for logging in during the end has not popped, which does suggest something else is going to come. As does the vortex above Dalaran. It's a little bit scary looking, but it's actually not as scary as what's been happening outside of Remix. I was perfectly happy doing housing things. Turns out other stuff's going on though. Blizzard's new player experience is supposed to solve a pretty big problem, and that is getting people to stay in World of Warcraft. Now naturally, a feature launch as massive as housing is really quite perfect for the game. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get people back trying WoW, or even just coming back to the game. So, pairing up the new player experience changes with that in one patch makes a whole bunch of sense. And to get down to the details, Blizzard did a whole bunch of major and minor changes to leveling. One of them was reducing the amount of XP needed from level 70 to level 80 by 80%. It's blazingly fast. It's almost hard to believe as you level up now. But there's a few other things. Most notable for today, the Arathi returning player tutorial and the War Within recap. On paper, they're pretty good changes. Basically, through asset reuse and clever editing, there are a lot of wins in the table here. But, translating that into reality has been interesting. Okay, this is a doozy. Now, we recently covered our experience on the release candidate, PTR, a little bit ago on the channel. But we wanted to check in now that it's actually out in the wild. And as it turns out, it's got worse. It is actually worse in the live servers than it was in the test realms, and Blizzard have said nothing. This is real weird. Now, there are 143 posts on this thread in the forums, and most of them are people saying they've had the same singular issue. Merrick's isn't spawning, so because of that, they can't continue. This was happening as of a week ago, and there's been zero Blizzard response. Not even a simple acknowledgement of the bug, just radio silence. And Merrick's isn't just some little nobody. Like, this is literally breaks War Within recap. One of the major things is non-functioning right now. That's quite disappointing. But hey, it's just one part of the patch. Surely everything else is working, right? Turns out, wrong. So, the War Within is not the only thing proving impossible. There are now multiple reports of people trying the new Dragonflight completion experience, only to find different issues to the ones that we reported. In one instance, they have no NPC option to do story mode, and whatever it is has actually broken Aberrus outright. Not just in story mode, but on every difficulty. So clearly, whatever scripts are supposed to run just ain't running. And in some other cases, players are finding scaling issues because, well, they're doing the campaign out of order, and it seems that doesn't really work that well. Basically seems Blizzard didn't consider the side effects of extending Dragonflight. You see, mobs and patch zones now scale to level 80, so if you just want to clean up old patch content for achievements, don't do that right now, because rare elites at level 82 are kinda just a nightmare. We thought this would be a new player experience thing. No, it turns out you can't go back to the Dragon Isles and just slaughter stuff in your main, which does seem like a bit of an unintended consequence. Now, you might think these things being a bit buggy would make sense because it's all part of the same new player experience. Well, it's not the only thing. In the most bizarre of cases, characters are actually being treated as if they're members of the opposite faction, and apparently it happens if they leave the new lore walking campaign at just the right time. If they do that, they will have their faction status be completely flipped until they go back and complete the quest. Now, naturally, that kind of leaves their character entirely unplayable. Well, not entirely unplayable, because one enterprising individual was able to exploit this to get a Horde house on an Alliance character. So, is there a takeaway from all of this? Yes, there is a takeaway. You may not like it. I think we may just have to get used to WoW being broken for a week or two with every new patch. honestly, I was so ready to just say, hey, oh my god, look at this. They've done it. It works. This is brilliant. It's amazing. It just turns out the things outside of housing didn't really make it live in full working order. And there are different ways of framing this. You could say that throughout all of this expansion, Blizzard have made it clear they won't delay a patch in order to solve issues ahead of time. They won't delay a patch to ensure that it will release without bugs. No, they just won't do that. Their strategy is to release whatever they have whenever it's ready and just do their best to fix it whenever you report the bugs live. Sometimes the same reports that you would have filed on the PTR, which is quite frustrating. Now, some of this is natural in a game that's this big and this old. Weird edge cases will crop up, and all devs can sometimes do is play whack-a-mole, especially when, while they're playing whack-a-mole, they've got their task list for the intended work they have to do next. But when it's at least one major feature with every patch, it does stop being excusable. I do love move fast and break things energy at times. The thing is, it's not supposed to be a permanent philosophy. For now, though, it does seem the Blizzard are treating it as such. That is what I would have said if there wasn't an example of Blizzard doing the complete opposite thing to incredible success, and even getting ahead of themselves on being the fun place. Player housing. Now that it's in early access, everyone's got their hands on it, and as you may have seen, people are kind of loving it. This has clearly been a massive success, and Blizzard obviously put tons of time into perfecting it. By now, you probably know, though, that there is a but coming in. Now that players have had their hands on it, there is some criticism that's coming in hot. Basically, there are minor issues everywhere, things from misaligned textures to exorbitant decor costs, which are fairly real problems. But in this case, I don't think that's a problem, and let me explain in the form of an example, and it's a really cool one. Players found some undocumented keybinds in the housing editor. Specifically, they found a way to move your house physically into the air, and it would just stay there. People figured out how to make their houses fly, and right away made a ton of crazy concepts. Things like jump puzzles to get to the entrance. I've seen a Galagio tank, mage-themed houses that are just floating up in the air. It looks absolutely amazing, and it's no surprise these things were posted over on the housing forum. It turns out the housing team noticed this, and rather than removing the functionality, they've decided to let us roll with it. So, what they were initially thinking of is, oh, oops, a bunch of unintended commands have slipped into the live build, players are doing a thing we didn't really design the system for. But then they thought, hang on a second, it does appear they're having fun. And then they did something shocking. They're leaving it in. It's really nice. So what they've done is they've posted a little warning about models not having a textured underside. But other than that, yeah, this is fine, and they are in full support of the creativity that it opens up. And as if that wasn't enough of a win, they've actually addressed feedback directly. So they are going to be making official, proper keybinds and UI for making our houses float. But another one of the biggest complaints over the past week has been the exterior decor limits. The original limit of 200 was a bit too slow for most of us to make a satisfying garden. Now, as it turns out, the reason why that limit was so low is basically performance concerns, because neighborhoods would have loads of houses with loads of exterior decor. But with it now being live and them having real performance data, that's of course consumer PCs, yes, but it's also their own servers. Now that they've got all of that, they've realized they can just give us more resources, so that limit has been up to 250. And in the same post, they even used two rather fitting quotes from different Pixar movies. This is extremely unlike Blizzard in a lot of ways, and I think it kind of tells the story of why housing itself is a massive win. Because it's not just the system and the feature, it's the overall approach, right? As far as we know, the player housing team had a lot of time to get this right. Basically, the story goes, they set out to make the best housing in any MMO, and they were actually given the budget and the time to make that happen. And not just a few patch cycles of time, literally multiple years. I've seen reports of a total of 5 years having went into this project. Obviously not all of that would have been full production, but it's markedly different from how a lot of World of Warcraft features have been developed. And I think the impact is kind of huge here, and it's clearly bled into their official attitude. Because they could have been defensive and turned off those controls, right? They could have thought, oh damn, we were shipping too fast, we made a mistake, oops, revert it now, and then once we've done that reversion, we just need to get on to the next problem. the live game churn. But it seems here, they were clear-headed enough to actually change their plans to allow for floating houses. Because as reality proves, whenever bugs crop up in housing, people don't seem to mind that much, because they trust the overall vision, they trust the approach, and more often than not, those bugs open up cool creative possibilities. I mean, lately, even the class team have kind of felt like that. Changes across the alpha and the beta have been more open than in the past, almost a bit relaxed feeling. In the past, we've had these real stressful periods of classes barely making it over the finish line. But this time round, there's none of that anxiety. There's some specs that I think will be losers going into this expansion, but it's not like some previous times. So here's my message to Blizzard. Please figure out how these working conditions are working out, what makes them different, and please try to make it happen more, because my god, it's really working. My initial reaction was that this feels like a feature, even in its early access, of a level of polish and just delight that reminds me of old Blizzard. When Blizzard meant extreme polish and amazing game feel. World of Warcraft has always struggled to feel like that because it's an MMO, and it's hard to do that in an MMO. This feature is the first time in a long time where modern Blizzard and modern WoW has put out a feature that reminds me of how I used to think about that company 15 years ago. Isn't that something? Now, if you want to figure out if your class is being a bit broken, a bit scrambled up going into midnight, well, you can check out our video on every range spec right here. And of course, after that, you can watch the melee one.